But first of all, I would like to bring on our panelist, our sponsor, Dan, to bring a few words of greetings from Udi. So, Dan?
Hello, this is Dan Hua. So I'm the Vice President of Marketing for the Udi's brand, for the border brands in Canada. So very much thank you for the invite to be here. And I'd like to just walk you through a few things on Udi's behalf. So first and foremost, we're obviously very happy to sponsor this event tonight. We know that for those with celiac disease, following a gluten-free diet is very much a medical necessity. But we just believe, though, it doesn't have to be boring and tasteless. The key thing being tasteless, because at Udi's we believe that gluten-free food really can be really delicious and wholesome and joyful. And so it's not only just that it's tasteful, but that tastes good, but also it's fun as well. So that's something we're striving for, that triangle between taste, nutrition, as well as fun. So we are really here to help for you and your family to enjoy the gluten-free lifestyle and learning and discovering new grains, new recipes, and importantly, new enthusiasm for delicious, wholesome food. So Sharon, could you, okay, good, thank you. So Sharon is my banner here, so. Just a little sort of headline about Udi's. So our tagline is very much about energizing your life. So we're very much committed to making delicious, high quality foods with clean ingredients. So that obviously always gluten-free. So that gluten-free is a requirement. It's a sort of a cost of entry, but it's more than that though. For us, it's about delicious quality and clean ingredients as well. So we know that Udi's is a brand that consumers trust. So we're committed to make sure that we earn that trust every day by providing wholesome and gluten-free foods that will energize your life. Okay, just a little bit of background about Udi's. So Udi's is the largest brand within the Boulder Brands family of natural foods. So our U.S. head office is located in Boulder, Colorado, and the Canadian head office is based out of Mississauga, Ontario. So that's where I am based out of. So Colorado, as some of you know, is very much the epicenter of health and wellness. So we really kind of leverage all the expertise and R&D development to make sure that we deliver against the most delicious products that are gluten-free. So we, not in addition to gluten-free foods that are available in both the Udi's and Glutino brand, we also are the leader in plant-based foods as well. So we actually make Gardein, which is actually produced in Canada, as well as Earth Balance, which is a plant-based bread. Okay, so the picture on your screen here just gives you some background about sort of the breadth of products that we have in terms of under the Udi's brand. So as you can see here, we are very much the leader, by far the market leader in frozen gluten-free items. So you've got all the bread and loaves and baguettes and bagels, and you name it. So the bakery, we also have all the cookies and muffins, which taste amazing. In addition, we also have wraps and pizza crust and tortillas. And if you haven't done so yet, on pizzas and dinners, they just taste amazing. So to be quite frank, if you taste our pizza and our frozen dinners, you wouldn't know that it's a gluten-free item because it tastes as good, if not better, than what you would expect from a gluten-free item. Okay, so in addition to offering products that are tasty, as well as gluten-free, we also strive to help our consumers with suggestions in terms of lifestyle choices and tips, as well as recipes. So if you go to the udisglutenfree.com website, it's got literally, just depending on your preference, your occasion, what you have on hand, and so on and so forth, you could really select the type of recipe that works best for you and your family throughout different day parts of the day. So I highly recommend you go there for it. It's just, one of the key things is making it joyful and tasteful. So leveraging some of these recipes would really kind of add more excitement and sort of turn the ordinary into the extraordinary everyday meal occasions. So in addition to this, it's not on the screen, but I also encourage you, to go to Facebook as well. So at Udi's Gluten Free, we also have by far the largest Facebook community in North America. So it's roughly about 1.5 million fans who are gluten-free advocates. who just, communicate with us, and we communicate with them on the Facebook page as well. So I highly recommend that if you haven't done so, to just try us out, because it's just constantly a lot of updates in terms of tips and recipes constantly being updated. So just a few suggestions here. Obviously, given the audience, we have a lot of different meals for different occasions for different people and different family members. But just kind of give you some samples, for your kids, some lunchbox ideas, that are fun, that's delicious, but that are easy to make, but are also very much use all of our Udi's, items, gluten-free items. So just look how delicious they are. And not only do they look delicious, but they're easy to make, and they actually taste as delicious as they look. So more of the same. So, you can see the variety into, all the way from quesadilla to guacamole dogs to sandwiches and so on and so forth. So lots of kid-friendly lunchbox ideas. So to just sort of a quick recap. So thank you very much for the invite, and we're very much proud to sponsor this event tonight. Our mission, as stated on this page here, is to very much provide you with the best tasting and fun gluten-free items, and we'll continue to make sure that you eat well and smile often. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. We're so pleased to have Udi's as a sponsor of our CCA webinar and helping us bring some education to the celiac gluten-free community. CCA also has a Facebook group. I'm not sure if some of the people joining us tonight have come from there, but if you're looking for another online community on a moderated group that is sort of invite only and kind of a nice intimate way to kind of share some of your concerns or share some of your tips, please consider joining our CCA Facebook group as well. So I want to first do a nice little introduction of our two next speakers, and then I'll hand it over to Jess Pernak and then Sue Newell for moderating. So Jess comes to us from BC, and she graduated from UBC's Food, Nutrition, and Health program and completed her dietetic internship with the Provincial Health Services Authority after finishing a psychology degree from SFU. She's an active member of Dietitians of Canada and is currently chairing a local action group advocating for primary care dietitians. She's currently working on the North Shore Choice Markets as a retail dietitian and in primary care at Continuum Medical Care. She acts as a clinical dietitian as well as a program lead on different lifestyle programs. Tonight she's going to be covering some nutrition basics and are here to help our kids do their best this year and prepare to send your kids back to school. Avoid analysis paralysis in the grocery store with these helpful tips and tricks she's going to give to you tonight. Take away some kid-friendly, easy-to-make recipes. And then after Jess, we'll have Sharon Frayne. She's as a high school teacher and an elementary principal in the Halton District School Board of Ontario. She has a commitment to safe and healthy learning environment for all students. She understands the importance of ensuring that the needs of children with food or environmental sensitivities are addressed. And Sharon's going to be sharing tips to help your child handle their nutritional needs in the classroom and school environment. And proactive parents can ensure their fellow students, teachers, and administrators understand celiac disease and gluten sensitivity and respect children's needs. Sue Newell, our moderator, will be covering some additional tips and asking some follow-up questions of our panelists to make sure this is a well-rounded night for you, and she'll be helping to moderate our questions as well. So I'm going to just get our next speaker up and going here, and so I can take you off mute, Jess, and get us started. If I can just get my screen to work here. And there you go.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Melissa. Before I forget, I just want to tell everybody, before I don't forget, I have a bunch of notes and a bunch of recipes that I'm going to be going over in the next 10 minutes or so. And I just, rather than you guys having to jot it down really quickly, or if there is a recipe that I mentioned, I'm going to post all of these notes and my recipes on my website, which is foodyourself.com, and it's going to go under resources. So please don't feel like you have to jot down notes. I can talk really quickly. So, and the recipes will be there as well. So, perfect. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about nutrition basics for back to school. And in particular, we're going to be covering breakfast, some good snacks or some better snacks than some that are out there, and some meal planning tips. Okay, so we're going to start with breakfast. So I'm sure you guys have heard over the years that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and I just wanted you to know that that's true, and there's no folklore at all involved in that. It's a true statement, and the reason why is because literally breakfast, you're breaking your overnight fast. So if you're an adult and you're sleeping for 8 hours a night, hopefully, or if you're a kid and you're sleeping for 10 to 12 hours a night, that's a long time for your body to be without any hydration or without any nutrients. So breakfast is your chance to really get the energy and the nutrients you need for healthy growth and healthy development. And research shows that children who skip breakfast may not make up the nutrients they miss out on. So in particular, we're talking about calcium and vitamin D, which tends to be in milk, and which is usually found in cereals or a glass of milk with breakfast. So don't miss out on those nutrients, and make sure you do have breakfast in the morning. And also they found that studies found that eating breakfast is associated with improved memory, better test grades, greater school attendance, and better behavior. So children who don't eat breakfast may feel tired and have trouble concentrating later on, which is another reason why we should have breakfast in the morning. But I get it, and I get that eating breakfast and the morning is busy and you're running around trying to get organized. So a little tip would be to plan for breakfast the night before. So some of the ideas would be after dinner, setting up the breakfast table. So that might seem really cheesy, but literally set the table the minute dinner is over. You can keep a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter, so just easy to grab apples and oranges, things that you can just grab out the door and go, or stock easy to pack breakfast items. So I'm thinking make your own trail mix ahead of time, which would include some dried fruit, nuts, and seeds. I'm going to put a recipe for a homemade trail mix up on the website. And you want to put these into small containers, grab a piece of fruit, some milk, and then you're set to go. You could spread some hummus on a rice cracker and then grab a peach or a plum, have a hard-boiled egg that you pre-made over the weekend, and then grab that with some yogurt and a piece of fruit, and breakfast is done. So I think the main message for breakfast is definitely have it, and you might just need to do a little bit of prep work the night before. Okay, so moving on to snacks. So that would be the next slide. Perfect. Okay, so why do we snack? So in particular, children need snacks because they actually have a smaller stomach and need constant refueling. So because children have this smaller stomach, when I'm saying smaller, I'm talking compared to adults, they usually can't eat as much as adults do at one time. So snacks can help them keep them satisfied, provide them energy between meals, and also obviously the nutrients involved in that as well. Unfortunately, a lot of the snacks that we grab when you go into a grocery store, you're overwhelmed with all the different granola bars or cereal bars that are fun and advertising to kids, but they tend to have not a lot of nutrients in them, tend to be high in sugar and lots of non-heart healthy fat. So fat's good, but just not the inflammatory fats. So the secret to a good snack is having protein and fiber. So what that means is when you're looking at that nutritional facts label on any sort of product, you want that fiber percentage to be more than 15%. So that's 15% of your daily recommended values. For kids, that might be a little bit high. The higher, the better. It's a good number, but I would say for kids, you're going to be aiming for about 10%. So you're looking for things that have good protein and good fiber. So both of those are going to give you the energy, and they're going to stick in your stomach between your next meals. So some of my favorite snack ideas are cottage cheese with fruit. So cottage cheese has tons of protein in it, and you're going to pair that with a fruit. Plain yogurt with fruit, and maybe some pumpkin seeds. So with plain yogurt, Greek yogurt has probably twice as much protein as just regular plain yogurt. You're also thinking of maybe hummus with some vegetables. Again, we're matching protein with fiber. roasted chickpeas. So I have a really good recipe for this that I'll share with you guys. But if you don't have time to make roasted chickpeas, then a really good company that makes them is called the Good Bean. And basically they have different flavors of roasted chickpeas. So you're looking at cinnamon or a little bit of salt, whatever makes you, fixes your craving is what I'm trying to say. Dessert tofu with fruit. I would only probably buy organic tofu right now. Edamame. Edamame is great for protein and fiber. Pumpkin seed butter with figs. So I say pumpkin seed butter because pumpkin seed butter is no peanuts, no tree nuts. It's safe for schools, and it has a peanut buttery taste to it. And it's green, so kids think that's hilarious. You have cold roasted veggies like yams, sweet potatoes, parsnips, bocconcini cheese balls with grape tomatoes, and trail mix. With the trail mix, I would recommend like a golden berry instead of raisins, just because golden berries have more fiber and less sugar. So that was a lot of information. I'm sorry, but those are just probably 10 of my top favorite snack ideas. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the last point, which is meal planning or power in the prep. So the first thing I'd recommend, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but plan well. So look at the family calendar over the weekend, maybe on Sunday night, to see where everybody is for the week. So any social events happening, any extracurricular activities that are happening, who's home, what are they doing? So you kind of get an idea of how many home cooked meals you need in the week and how many kind of quick, easy meals you need in the week. So it really, it's great it's a 5-minute thing, and it really saves the household when you kind of you don't have to do a lot of grocery shopping. It's more just having an idea of when you come home and you're not having to go, oh, what do I feel like for dinner? What does so-and-so feel like for dinner? And it's just takes a lot of pressure off. So prep before Monday too. So I would say don't spend a lot of time doing this. Give yourself an hour over the weekend and get the kids involved. Kids can help in the kitchen. And just give yourself an hour of cutting up a variety of fruits and vegetables. Hard boil like a dozen eggs. Hard-boiled eggs will keep in your fridge with the shell on for about a week. You could batch cook some make-ahead muesli for breakfast or chia seed pudding for a snack. Just to give you a little bit of the make-ahead muesli recipe, it naturally calls for steel-cut oats, but if you are a recently diagnosed celiac, then I would not recommend using oats, and I would probably do like a buckwheat grout instead. The buckwheat grouts have the same sort of texture to them as a steel-cut oat, which makes it a nice substitute. Or you could also do millet, but millet might get a little bit soft on you. Basically, with the make-ahead muesli, you're just pouring some whole grains in with some raisins, cinnamon, vanilla, and maybe grate a whole apple in there and let it soak in some dairy, whether it be a soy milk or an almond milk or milk itself, overnight in the fridge. Then you have this breakfast every day. And the chia seed pudding would be just like a can of coconut milk with some chia seeds, maple syrup, and vanilla, and that would be a really easy, good fat snack that your kids can eat. And the last part about power and prep would be at dinner time. So I think the easiest thing to do when you're busy and kids are doing different activities is when you do have the chance to make a homemade meal, double the ingredients. So if you're doing, let's say, chili, double that chili. And whether you eat it for lunch the next day or mom and dad can take it for lunch the next day, or even if you just freeze it in your freezer for one of those nights when you're taking your kids to, one's in soccer, one's in baseball, you can at least have a frozen home-cooked meal in your freezer. So I think that's it for me.
We've had some questions come in already for you. One of the first one was, what is your website? All right, can you hear me now? Jess, can you hear me?
I'm muted. Oh, there we go.
There
yes,
we
I'm
go.
unmuted.
Okay, we've had a few questions come in already for you. The first one was, what is your website again?
Yeah, sorry, it was Food Yourself. So FOOD and yourself, YOURS.
All right, good. And I'll make sure that information gets posted with the details here as well. One of the questions, and I don't know whether Dan, you want to answer it or what, you mentioned what high fiber what you identified as a high fiber. Can you remind me again, Jess? Was it greater than 16%?
So for anybody, I would say greater than 15, 1-5.
Okay.
But I would say for kids, anything greater than 10 would be significant.
Okay. Now, Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know whether you deal with the ins and outs of your products, but one of the questions was, are there some from Udi's? Oops, let's see if we can get Dan unmuted here.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear us, Dan?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
What can you tell us about the fiber in Udi's products?
You know what? I could provide a follow-up on that because there's so many different products that I would be speaking out of turn when I get into those level of details.
Okay.
So one nice thing we do have this, that
Yep.
also gives some more color behind it. If you go to our website, Udi's gluten-free website, it will have all the nutritional information on there.
Awesome. I actually took a quick look, and you definitely have two that are significant sources. The omega flaxen fiber and the millet and flax. Both of those are over 20% in a single serving. So definitely.
Yeah, and also too, obviously this is an obvious thing, but obviously all the nutritional information is available in the back of the packaging. So all of our products would have all the nutritional information as well.
There you go. So you're looking at the back of the package to read the ingredients. The nutrition information is there too.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as too much fiber, Jess?
You know what? No. Of course, the answer is yes, but nobody would ever reach that amount. So I think it's one of those things like vitamin D where everyone's deficient in it, no matter even if you start mindfully trying to eat as much as possible. But no, I wouldn't say you couldn't overeat fiber.
Okay. We had another question about non-dairy alternatives. Now, I know you mentioned a few at with your list towards the end, the chia pudding and some of the things where you could use a variety of different milks. Any other specific suggestions for kids who have both dairy and gluten issues?
Yeah, so I would say there's so many fantastic companies out there that are making different dairy alternatives. So you have and I know for school it's a little bit tricky with the almond milks and the cashew milks, but my philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's coconut milk or cashew milk or almond milk or soy milk, there's hemp, not hemp, but rice-based milks. Basically, rotate it. So every time you go grocery shopping, buy a different one. So they all give you different nutrients. So just to have some variety in your diet. So if it's almond milk one week, switch it to coconut milk another week.
Oh, cool. I never thought about that. That's a great idea. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And the last one is a question I had. Often kids may have a upset stomach for a day or two after an event. Sometimes, well, all kids have upset stomachs for a day or two sometimes. Is there any suggestions for what we could eat on those days, especially things you could send to school that might be just a little easier on the tummy?
Yeah, so it's funny. So the whole bland diet, there's actually no research to support a bland diet being either soothing for the digestion or having any sort of medicinal properties to it. So we all kind of go to that rat diet, but I would say the best thing that you could probably do for your kids would, if they're not plant-based, is to do a bone broth. So bone broth has amazing healing properties to it. There's lots of protein in bone broth as well, and you can buy it in grocery stores. So this is a new thing that I'm finding where 3 years ago you wouldn't be able to find it at all, but it's something to put into a thermos. You could add some vegetables or some whole grains to it to give it a little bit more of some nutrition, but I would say bone broth alone would be probably my number one recommendation. The other thing, if it's an upset stomach, people like to do ginger ale, and I would probably say do ginger, but maybe if they like the carbonated flavoring or the texture, or whatever word you want to use, maybe do like a ginger kombucha instead of a ginger ale.
Mm-hmm. get a little less sugar in there. Is that
Yeah,
the idea?
exactly.
Sounds like a good plan. All right. If you have additional questions for Jess, please keep throwing them into the Q&A box, and we'll make sure they get answered, whether we have time to do it in this session or whether we need to do it a little bit later. But we'll definitely make sure we get some answers for you. But for right now, I'd like to move on to Sharon Frayne. Sharon is a educator with a wide variety of experience. As Melissa said, as a principal, as a classroom teacher, and what we asked Sharon to talk about was a little bit about how to work with the school to best advocate and make sure your child gets the information they need. So Sharon, what's your number one tip?
Oh, great. Thanks. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. And before I get started, Sue, with some tips, we had talked about doing a little survey to see whether we've got what age group the kids are that we're going to be looking at. Are they elementary school, preschool? And then I can try to target some of my questions and some of my talk to the age group. So if you're able to do that, great. If not, I'll just keep right on going.
Do a clear poll, but if you would like, if those who are you listening would like to go to the chat box and just type in elementary, high school, preschool, whatever happens to be, I'll get a rough estimate. I'm suspecting that the majority are elementary, and that's certainly the first ones that are coming in.
Okay, that's super. Well, if we could go to the first slide that I have, and I know that everybody, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, or even in my case, an administrator, everyone is nervous about the first day of school, and it's only about 2 weeks away. So how do we get ready for school if we've got a special need, especially with our eating, to make sure that we're going to be happy and we're going to be healthy when we're there? So I made up this little diagram, and I think of parents as being like an umpire for their child, an umpire with the school and an umpire on behalf of their child's needs to make sure that the child is properly cared for when they're at school. Schools always want to do their best for children to make sure that they're successful, but we really need parents to be on board to help us understand individual children's needs. So the first thing I said that parents need to do is to thoroughly understand their child's medical needs. Make sure you really talk to your healthcare provider to understand exactly what it is your child needs to have in place for them so that they can be successful at school. What are the kinds of foods that they can eat? And we've looked at lots of things so far tonight. What things do they really need to avoid? And what kind of products does the school need to be aware of that the child shouldn't come in contact with? So make sure you gather up all of that information, and especially if you've got some documentation from your healthcare provider, get that ready, and then see if you can get in and talk to the administrator at the school that you're going to be going to, your child's going to be going to, before school starts. Most administrators, most offices will be up and running this week because there's only 2 weeks till school starts. So you can usually go in and meet with an administrator, the office staff, sometimes even a teacher will be in, and say, look, this is what my child's medical needs are. These are the things that they need to have in place for them to make sure that they'll be healthy and happy at school. And these are the things that we need to avoid. And then try to come together and create a plan. So that's our next P for success. And if you can work with the principal or the headmaster, whoever's in charge of the school, and the office staff, maybe even a special education teacher, to come up with a plan that will make sure that your child's individual needs are going to be met when they're at school. And if you can get that in paper, all the better. Sometimes schools will even create an individual, we call it an IEP, an individual education plan, or some kind of just an informal plan to make sure that a child's needs are going to be met. That's important to get that in place. The next tip I have, I call individual, if we go back again, individual self-advocacy. Make sure your child understands what their health needs are, what their eating needs are, what they need to avoid, so that they can advocate for themselves and say, just a little reminder to the teacher or the person in charge, this is what I need so that I'll be healthy, or this something that's happening right now isn't going to be good for me. So help your child be confident and assertive about what their needs are going to be. The next letter that I've got up there is R, for relationships. And I really think that forming good relationships with the school, whether it's with the office, whether it's with the teacher, other parents in the classroom, that can really help your child to be successful. So start trying to build those positive relationships. See yourself as a team with the office and with the teacher to make sure that everybody is on board to make sure your child is going to be successful. And then finally, the E, encourage self-esteem and celebrate success. So when your child comes home and they've had a good day and they've managed to problem solve if there was a little issue, congratulate them and do something special to celebrate the fact that your child's had a really good day at school. They've managed to eat healthfully. If there was a little situation that arose, we were able to solve it, and that everybody feels good. So encourage self-esteem and celebrate success. So our next slide, please. One of the things that parents really can do to be aware of the things that are in place already to help their child is to understand legislation and policies that are in place to help you. I'm speaking as an administrator from Ontario, and we would be guided by the Ministry of Education legislation that would affect all publicly funded schools in Ontario. So that would be the Catholic school system as well as the public school system. But that does not mean that these legislations are in place for your child if you have chosen to go to a private school. That would be a completely different matter, and you'd have to find out yourself what things are in place at your school. Now, every province across Canada has their own Ministry of Education, but they would all have similar policies around health and safety. So you can go online to the Ministry of Education in your province and look up to see what the guidelines are around health and safety to ensure that those things are in place for your son or daughter, and you can advocate for them based on those policies, because they must be in place in publicly funded schools. Local school boards will also have their own policies to try and implement the legislation that the province has created. So if you go onto your own school board site, for example, I was with the Halton District School Board, I just have to go to their website and I can locate their health and safety guidelines, and I can see if I had a child with celiac, or I had a child with asthma, or a child with a concern about anaphylaxis. I can quickly look up to see what policies are in place to make sure that those are going to be in place for my child to ensure their success. And then your individual school should have procedures in place. So again, that's why I say it's important to go and talk to the administration before the school year even starts and say, what are you going to do, or what can you do to make sure that my child is going to be healthy and happy at school? And sometimes those procedures have to be manipulated or changed a little bit so that they adapt to your own particular child's needs, because your child might have a little bit different need than the school's already experienced, or they may be very familiar with a child with celiac or an eating need, and they already have lots of good things in place. And then make sure that that plan that we talked about with the first slide is communicated to the classroom teacher. If there's going to be a lunchroom supervisor, that the lunchroom supervisor is aware of your child's needs. The special education teacher should be aware, office staff, and of course the administration. So that's why I say being aware of what's already in place and making sure you get that plan in place for your child is really important. Okay, we have the next slide, please. In Ontario, I put these links on this slide for you. So if the slideshow is available afterwards, people can just go click on these links. This will take you to the healthy school legislation that's created by the Ontario Ministry of Education. One really important piece of legislation for parents to be aware of is something called Sabrina's Law. This is known as Bill 3, and this defines the school's responsibility to create strategies to reduce risk, create a communication plan, regular training, individual plans for anaphylactic pupils, requests for health information upon registration, and file maintenance. Now, anaphylaxis is obviously, celiac is not anaphylaxis, but it is a similar kind of health risk. And if you were saying, you know, I need this plan for my child because Sabrina's Law guarantees this for other children, therefore something should be in place for my own particular child's needs. Another important piece of legislation is the Healthy Food for Healthy Schools Act of 2008. Another good piece, just to click that on and you can review what's in place that schools must follow. And then there's a piece of policy called PPM 150, School Food and Beverage Policy. And that's interesting as well, because that talks about special days at school and what kinds of food can be sold in schools. And I think parents need to be aware of that legislation as well. Can we get the next slide, please? Now, this is my own school board, the Halton District School Board. And so I wanted to show you that you can go to your individual school board's website and look up their health and safety protocols. So these links would take you to health and well-being and school health protocols at that school board. And I know that parents also are concerned about whether their child is going to be bullied when they go to school. And I mean, that can happen to anybody, and it often does happen. So what do we do as a parent to try to prevent that from happening to our child, and what do we do if it does occur? So on that particular site, you can follow the link to bullying prevention and awareness, and it gives you lots of good links and good tips that are just general good pieces of advice. Okay, I think we got one more. I was asked to talk about what do we do if there is a bully at school. What if you think your child, because of their eating needs, is being bullied at school? For example, somebody's making fun of your child's lunch, or they do something that you think is going to be harmful to your child. What should the child do, and what should you do? Well, my number one thing is that you need to tell someone, and this is what I'm hoping, if the child is old enough, that they can start to advocate for themselves. That's why I say it's very important for children to self-advocate and speak up when they have a problem. So first of all, as soon as something happens, make sure your child tells a responsible adult about the situation. Hopefully they can tell someone right at school that there's a problem. And then they should come home and tell you so that mom and dad know that there's a problem. Then make sure that if it hasn't been dealt with right away, that the supervising adult, whether it's a lunchroom monitor, the teacher, the recess supervisor, make sure that they know about the health risk and the bullying. And that's why we need to have that plan in place, that you can say, look, this plan is in place for my child. Let's make sure that it's followed. And encourage your child to be confident about themselves and assertive, so that they can speak up about their needs. And I think it's important to encourage a network of friendly supporters. Encourage your child to have lots of friends that they sit with, that they're friends. Barbara Kohler also often talks about the importance of the bystander standing up to help a child that's being bullied. So a friend that can say, hey, you know, leave them alone, or that's not nice, or something to stop it. It's also very supportive. And then if the problem continues, or if the problem is severe enough in the first place that you are really concerned, make sure that you speak to the administrator, and they should follow up to make sure that the situation is corrected. I think I have one more slide. And I want to say to everybody, have a wonderful school year. It's not far off, and it's a great time to celebrate the opportunities that lie ahead of your child, and hopefully it's going to be a wonderful year for children and for their parents. Thanks. I think that's it for me.
Yep, just needed to unmute myself. Thank you a lot. I really love the umpire thought, because when you think about baseball, an umpire is there to make sure the rules are followed and the game is fair, but not to interfere with things as the game is being played.
Right.
As long as all is well.
Right.
And I really loved that metaphor. That was great. One of the questions that's come up, and I think it's probably reasonable to expect that there's similar legislation in other provinces. It might not be exactly the same.
I would expect that there would be. I think that the province by province, the ministries of education really talk to each other. And if there's been a situation in one province that's required legislation to be put in place, you can be pretty sure that that legislation is going to be similarly followed in other provinces. So I would say just go to, no matter what province you're in, go to your Ministry of Education website and check out what their policies would be.
Right. And I mentioned that I would do a little bit of research on that too and see what I could find in terms of just making it quicker for some people who are a little short in time and trying to get life ready for things ready to go back to school. One of the things when you were talking about the bullying, I have a friend who's also in the school system. Said, you know, there's a whole protocol in place for dealing with this, for progressive discipline and all that stuff. But if we don't know what's happening, we can't even invoke that protocol. And so that's when you said it's really important to let people know. It is really important to let people know. Ideally, your child can, but if not, that's one place where you definitely need to be that advocate.
Exactly. I mean, your voice is fading in a little bit, so I'm not sure if you're.
Sorry about that. I'll try upping the volume a bit.
Okay. Yeah, obviously discipline is progressive, and we try to solve problems at the lowest level of intervention first. So first of all, make sure that plan is in place, because if there's a good plan, the teacher and the rest of the children in the classroom have already built a really warm, caring environment. People take care of each other. So it's less likely to happen if we have good things in place first and then have the child confident to speak up for themselves right away when something happens.
Great.
Just switching microphones here. Is that a little bit better?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, good, thanks. All right, let's move on with a few additional things. All right, why are we not? Oh, this one. I really love this suggestion from JC on our Facebook page today, and one thing she said was it's not that we're trying to have the teacher do anything, it's how can we make this classroom safe as a team, so as a parent and the teacher, administrator, all of those for the child. And obviously the younger the child is, the more specific you may need to be, but it can be at all ages. As she mentioned, you know, we do this for 6 years, so middle school just as much as other classes. One of the things that's important is that the first conversation is with your child. Now, I wrote this issue about temptation down, and one of the first questions that came in was, in fact, a child in grade 2 who was having a lot of problems with temptation. She wanted to know what the food the other kids were eating tasted like. And I think that's an issue that school isn't necessarily the ideal place to address it, although it's probably where the temptation happens the most. And it really is a tough situation to deal with. If anyone has suggestions on how they've dealt with that with their children, please feel free to share them. The question is whether the child should be isolated in order to prevent this. Obviously, you're going to have to figure out what's going to work for your child, but that would be the least best option, I would say. And dealing with the issues that are making this child feel deprived or feel frustrated may be the first thing to start with. There's no question that all children are going to be tempted at some point at school, and most of them at some point will transgress and will eat a gluten-containing product. And the goal is to make sure that it's identified by you, and that you talk to the child about what was going on, were you frustrated, were you feeling left out, and try to deal with whatever the source that triggered the temptation was. Although, to be honest, it's going to happen. It's just the way it is. It's going to happen. Another one is sharing. When kids are really little, they often will want to share their foods with their brothers or with their parents, which could be a gluten issue on its own, but it's definitely something to talk about with the kids. And you know, they really need to learn to eat only the food that you have sent them. Even if somebody else says, oh, this is gluten-free, you know, you want to teach the kids to be open, but when they're really young, it really has to be just food that you get from me or from a designated set of folks. Another thing is this feeling of feeling different and left out. We're adults, and those of us who have celiac disease often feel different or left out. Imagine how much harder it is when you're a child. And apart from that empathy, you know, even just talking about it will sometimes make it a little bit easier. When you say, you know, I feel, if you're celiac, I feel left out sometimes too, or I know other people have that feeling, can be helpful just to reassure them that it's not wrong for them to feel that way. Sometimes they'll feel guilty about feeling different, or, you know, you get into this vicious cycle. The other thing is, though, that they do need to abide by the restrictions, and obviously that's something you're going to be teaching all of the time. We do find that the kids who've been gluten-free from the very beginning, you know, they were diagnosed at 18 months or 2 years, tend to have an easier time with this, because getting food that's different and getting food that's their own has always been part of their life. And here we've got, as opposed to a child who's making that difference. So it's just something to think about. I do want to just key on a few key things, because these are the questions that come up so often. So we'll talk specifically about craft supplies, lunch and snack issues, special days, unexpected food events, and just some general issues. Now, one of the questions is always, what about crafts? Most crafts do not have an issue with gluten in them, but there were a few specific ones that do. Play-Doh, I'm sure you all know, is one of them. And what you may not remember is, if you're going to give your child separate Play-Doh, they also need separate tools, you know, the things they roll with or cut with, that sort of thing, because you can contaminate things just that same way. Some schools have found it in their budget to buy or acquire gluten-free for the entire class. In some cases, I know parents have taken it on and said, I will supply you with gluten-free Play-Doh for the entire class for the year. Some cases, it's just sent for that particular child. So you'll have to work out what is going to work with your classroom. I know that in many cases where they use homemade Play-Doh, they replace it every week. So just be aware that that's a potential issue for you as well. There are a few finger paints that have a wheat-based product in them. And the only way to tell is by looking at that ingredient list. Unfortunately, there's no, you know, use this brand, not that brand. So that's one that you need to check out. Paper mache paste has the same issue. Now you can make homemade and you can make it out of white glue, so it doesn't have to be. But that is an issue that you do need to keep an eye on. Pasta art, I don't know how popular that is, but it was certainly popular for a lot of years. And the good news is there's lots of different shapes of gluten-free pasta, but you're going to need a day's notice or so that you know that you're available, that you can supply an equivalent for them. Last year, one family had a problem because the class made stress balls, you know, those balloons filled with something that's squishy, and unfortunately they used flour for that. So that was a problem just because they had airborne flour in the classroom. Another thing, usually food is not used for counting and sorting, but I do know that there are still classrooms that use jelly beans to sort by different colors and to count the numbers of each different color. So it's just a case of being aware of that, particularly in the younger classrooms. As I mentioned, researching the ingredients can be extremely frustrating. And I found this quote on the Crayola site today that says, although the exact ingredients of our products are proprietary, a few do contain wheat as an ingredient. Well, could you tell us which ones contain wheat as an ingredient? No, it's proprietary. So you get into this catch-22. One way you may be able to do it is there's something called a materials safety data sheet. That might be, materials safety data sheet. It's a thing that's made for all products that have potential toxicity, potentially flammable. It's the sort of thing that's used in the construction industry, but it also has to be applied for certain types of craft material. So if you search for MDSD and then the product name, whether it's MDSD, Elmer's glue, or whatever, they may or may not have one, but if they do, it will frequently include the ingredients in the ingredients section. So that's a tip that may help. In terms of lunch and snack, there's a couple of key issues. One is that alcohol wipes don't really do anything to get rid of gluten. It needs to be hand washing with running water because it's that scrubbing motion that rubs the gluten off and the running water rinses it away. So that needs to be sorted out with the class as to how that will work, whether it's the entire class that goes to wash their hands before or whether it's your child, and definitely teach your child, you know, how to wash their hands well. That's something that will last them well throughout their life. Another issue is table wiping. Whether the kids are eating in their own classrooms or they're eating in a lunchroom, there may be a challenge with crumbs left on the table. And somebody pointed out that they were told it was the janitor's problem, and oh, by the way, the janitor only came in 3 days a week. Well, that's not good enough. So that could be an issue that you need to push a little bit with in terms of how that's going to be dealt with for your child. If everybody's eating in the classroom, it can definitely be some issues with crumbs flying, especially at the younger ages. And so that shared table concern becomes an issue. There may be, if it is an issue for your child, there may be some suggestions about, you know, spreading out a little bit, or perhaps modifying the people your child sits with, depending on who are the particularly messy eaters, so to speak. But it is something that you may have to deal with, and obviously you've probably already dealt with food sharing, but that needs to be a reminder, not only to your child, but also to whoever's supervising lunch, because there have certainly been kids who will happily switch their gluten-free sandwich for something else from somebody else's lunchbox on a regular basis because they prefer it. Obviously, it's not the ideal situation, but it's something you need to know is going on. I grabbed a couple of pictures because one of the things that can help is a placemat for your child, and it can be anything from a large oversized cloth napkin to something really fancy that rolls up and holds cutlery in it. But what it does is it provides that barrier. So that goes down on the table, and then your child's lunch goes on top of it. So it's providing that physical barrier, which is what we're always looking for to prevent contamination, is that physical barrier. So that has worked quite well. If it's something like a napkin, you may need to wash it when it gets home, so you may need to have 2 or 3 to get you through the week. But that can be quite a useful tool. And it also provides a boundary for the other kids. This is my stuff. This is my area. Couple of other thoughts. It can be hard once. How do you get beyond the sandwich spot if you're just converting? And these were just some pretty little ideas of almost like bento boxes. The ones on the right are kind of like Lunchables, if you take a look at the general structure, and you can make something similar or something that fits with what your child is interested in. The one on the right, the divisions are actually made with those silicone muffin cups, and that gives you a lot of more opportunity to put different things in. If you start looking for bento box lunches, or lunch options on the internet, you will certainly find thousands and thousands of them. So these were just a couple that I put out there just to give you a bit of a thinking starting point. One of the things, interesting that we have doubles. One of the things that comes up sometimes is when there's something like hot dog lunch, what do I do? Well, it turns out if you put a hot dog in a thermos with boiling water, it will still be plenty hot at lunchtime. And chicken nuggets works as well. One of the things that I would suggest is that you send any condiments that your child is going to use. If they're going to put ketchup on their hot dog, even though there may be ketchup for all the other kids, send a package for them so that you don't have to worry about contamination issues. Obviously, these special days come along: pizza day, hot dog day, hot meal day, special meal days, track meet and play days. All of those come along. And this is a case where for most kids, they really want to have something similar to what their friends are eating. So on pizza day, they want to have pizza. And some schools will say, well, we'll order a gluten-free pizza. That's awesome, but there's a lot of potential for contamination there, and many parents I know are just not prepared to do that. So they will either bring pizza to their child at the designated time, or they will send pizza that can be warmed up or even eaten cold at the appropriate times. So both pizza day and hot dog day, those are things that you're going to have to think about. Hot meal day, again, that's a problem for many families where hot meals are provided on a regular basis, and it's something to talk about with your the teacher and the supervisor about how specific you're going to handle that. Sometimes there's special meal days, whether it's a Thanksgiving meal or a whatever kind of holiday meal it is, whatever. It's just that case of being aware and making sure that the school gives you notice, because your child might not remember until 8 o'clock in the morning that it's special day. And that's really not when you want to be trying to deal with this, but it might happen. Even things like track meet day and play day, because there will often be special treats. I remember play days where we all got popsicles in the middle of the afternoon. That may be all right, or it may not. But similar is important, particularly with the very young kids, but even with the kids in middle school, they really don't want to be different. And so that's where you really need to work with them on figuring out what will work for them in particular, as well as within the school situation. I ran into this a few weeks ago. It was an entire school lunch setup, and they said, you know, we've worked with, and it was a culinary college, to create a meal that will accommodate both cultural and allergy concerns. Now there they had a variety of food restrictions, not just from allergies, but also from foods that were appropriate for certain ethnic groups. That's kind of like a landmine field for you right now. There are different ways you can handle it. You can talk to the folks and make sure that you are comfortable with the provisions that are made. You can make something equivalent. Worst case scenario, you can declare it a special holiday for your child and do something special. But that really misses out on the part of the school experience, which is doing things in a group. You have to find out what you are comfortable with and what your child is comfortable with. Unexpected food events, plain and simple, it happens. Somebody drops in with something. They have a guest speaker who brings a treat for everybody, not knowing that this isn't the normal process. One thing that's good is if you can supply a special treat for your child that they don't normally get, so it's really special because they only get it at school on these unusual days. Some people will provide cupcakes and put it in the freezer, for example, but it's working out better for many families if they can get something that has no expiry date that can be kept at room temperature, even if it's a favorite kind of chocolate bar or something like that. It's not perfect. You know, these are treats, not everyday things. And this, amazingly, is a situation where different is okay for a lot of kids. You know, everybody has a cupcake, but I had a chocolate bar, or whatever the particular extra special treat is. And many children will be very happy with that. So it's a situation that ideally you work out in advance with the teacher and have supplies as appropriate for your child. Field trips. I mean, the best field trips are where everybody packs their own lunch. There are some times where, you know, we're going on this trip and we'll be ordering pizza for everybody, or there'll be this provided for everybody. I would consider those a take your own lunch too, although then you're needing to be a little bit similar to exactly what the rest of the people are taking. So just be aware of that. Volunteering as a parent chaperone is always important, and you may find that you get tagged with all the other kids who have special dietary needs and allergens when they divide up the groups, but at least you're aware of it, as opposed to your child being in a group where, you know, somehow things just don't click in as to what your child's needs are. A few general issues. Depending on the child's symptoms, they may be in a situation where they basically need to have unrestricted bathroom privileges. When they're first diagnosed, when they're very young, even sometimes things can flare up or whatever, you'll need to talk about whether they need an escort. Sometimes in the kindergarten classes or young ages, there will be washrooms in the classroom, but if there aren't, if it's set up that, you know, they always need to be escorted, you and the school will need to work out a procedure for what you're going to be doing. It may be something that's only needed occasionally, and ideally it will be something that's set up and never needed. That would be perfect. But have a plan for accidents if this is a concern for your child. Some kids are just deathly afraid of having an accident in front of their classmates. So make sure that there's a plan there, there's clothes that can be changed or whatever is needed. Now, depending on the kid may start abusing this process. Now, I realize as I just read that, that's not the way I wanted to say that. But there are kids who will take advantage of it, and, you know, it's math class and they'll suddenly have to go to the bathroom and they'll be there for 20 minutes. So just be aware of your kid's nature, and you may occasionally want to check in with the teacher and make sure that this isn't a problem. So just that's where you know your kid best and how they will react to things. The other thing is a procedure for accidental gluten exposure. Something may happen, your child may end up eating something that wasn't expected. Your child has been glutened at school. How is the school going to communicate with you? And you need to find a way that you will be notified that this happened, not that your child will tell you this happened. So there's another item for your discussion list. Finally, I want to say, you know, you're not alone in this. I thought this was a great quote. I'm feeling tired of trying to convince people these things matter. This year we have another new teacher, another new relationship, another new principal. And this is a mom who's done this for several years and with various success. Some teachers have been just awesome. Some teachers have not been awesome. And, you know, I certainly understand that feeling of, oh no, I'm doing it again. There are resources to help out. One of them is our CCA Facebook forum, where there are a lot of people who faced exactly the same problem. That's the great thing about that Facebook forum. You ask a question and you will have 15 answers from people who've been there, done that in 30 minutes. So that's something that most of us don't have as an option. There's also info at asktheceliac.ca. That comes directly to the desk of those of us who answer questions, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can on any of those specific items. Now, I see that we have a lot of questions in here. Thank you. Kira asked, is it okay to sit with my friends if they're eating gluten? And the answer is yes, it is, as long as they're not spraying crumbs all over so that they get on your food. So as long as your friends are happy to eat politely and they're not purposely putting food or their gluten on your food, absolutely. And I think it's really important, because that's when we all get a chance to relax when we're sitting with our friends, sitting around having food to eat. So that was a great question, Kira, and I'm really glad you asked it. All right, as I look through these questions, I think the last one we have here really, I think that was sort of the last one. Couple things for you to consider. Joining the CCA or donating is a great way to make sure that we are there to continue to help you advocate for your child. to be able to be present to do webinars like this and to deal with things through the time frame. For those of you who are already members, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. For those of you who are not, we have a special deal set up. We have a promo code B2S, Back to School 2017, so Back to School 2017. If you give us that code, we will take the $15 new membership off of your membership fee for the year. So you'll pay $50 instead of $65 for the year. And the best way to do it right now is to call us at 1-800-363-7296. We're having a bit of a challenge with the website at the moment, and the online payments are not working correctly. So, but if you call that, you can talk to Lisa, and she will take your credit card or arrange for you to send a check. All of those are options for you. So, Back to School 2017. All right, I just want to check, were there any last minute questions either in our chat or in the question box? Advice on food anxiety during lunchtime. Yeah, that is a big challenge, and some kids are happy and some kids are anxious about it. Ideally, even the most anxious child can find a lunch buddy that they are comfortable with sitting beside. Anxiety about baking activities in school, that's actually a really good thing to be anxious about. And it is extremely difficult to do a wheat-based baking activity in a class and not manage to get flour all over the place, because it just flies. And it could be sufficient to cause illness for your child. So that is probably something to talk about at the beginning with the class as to, or with the teacher as to what kind of things are planned for that. And to be honest, there's probably no reason to have to do a baking activity or a cooking activity with wheat-based flour. There are different ways to do, there are different products you can make that don't have flour in them. If they want to do things like cooking for fractions and that sort of thing. Some families have actually provided gluten-free flour for the entire class to use. More options again there. So it's certainly appropriate to be anxious. And I would expect, in addition to general food anxiety, many kids are going to have anxiety over the next little while as they get ready to go back to school. So that's just one more thing to try to subtly ask, so what is it that's concerning you? Okay, a couple more questions. Hand sanitizers in school. They're not going to contain gluten. It's fine to have them, but they're just not going to denature the gluten and make it safe or clean hands adequately.
Sue, can you hear me? So,
yes, I can.
Sharon. Yeah, I'm just going to jump in there because I saw that question. Now, I don't know that this is going to happen across Canada, but definitely in Ontario, the alcohol-based hand sanitizers are not allowed in classrooms because they're extremely flammable. So,
yes. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a no-no. They're not allowed in schools. So, you know, there might be something else that you can think of that you need, but try and find something that's not one of those alcohol-based sanitizers, because they're a no-no.
The best solution is good hand washing, and that's really the critical one for people with celiac disease. Gluten isn't a germ that can be treated with alcohol or any of those other sanitizers. So thank you for letting us know. That's very useful. And there would definitely be a materials data safety sheet on the hand sanitizers, because that would definitely qualify. All right, I think we have covered the rest of these. I will certainly review them and confirm that we've covered everything and included in any question and answer documentation that we have. Melissa, did you have anything that you wanted to wrap up with, or does? Thank you. Yes, exactly. Thank you to Udis. Thank you to all of you for staying and participating. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send them to us. and we will make sure they get answered. We will be posting a recording, whether it'll be this one or the one that we're doing at 10 o'clock tonight. But we will get it up in the next couple of days. Those of you who've worked with video know it takes a while just to get it converted into proper forms. So, but thank you very much, and thank you so much to all of our speakers, to Jess and to Sharon, and particularly to Dan and Udis for presenting tonight. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.